Welcome back to Brushes and Blades, and today we are going to be going over two different methods of highlighting and layering, one using a stipple brush and one using a standard brush, and showing you those. We are going to paint this beautiful draconian dreadnought. He's quite a big boy, but the trick is that we're going to paint him in half, one with one method and one with the other method, and you are going to let me know which one you like the best. Let's get down to the paint cam. All right, so here's the model box art that we're going to be painting today, and the two brushes that we're going to be using, and the paints that we're going to be using. Just these three colors right here. It's going to be primarily these two, this blue black and this dark gray blue. And then for extra highlight, we're going to be using this faded ultramarine blue, but it's more like going to be a 50-50 with this faded ultramarine blue. All right, let's get set up here. And this is my workhorse brush. It's not in the best condition, but it is one of my go-to little brushes here. And this other brush that we're going to be using for the stippling method is actually not really an artist brush. It is a makeup brush for smudging. This is a smudge makeup brush, but it's soft enough and it holds moisture well enough that if you push, you don't get it into the fine cracks and details. So we can actually use this in a stippling motion. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up here, but I'm going to show you my number one tip of how I load up my wet palette for doing these methods. First, we're going to start off with this blue black, make a nice blob, make a tail. Not a very good tail. Clean it up. Get that excess off. All right, and then we're going to go into this dark gray blue and kind of do the same thing with the other direction. Big fat blob, and then run it up. Clean it off. And then we're going to take our brush and we're literally just going to blend these colors together so we don't have to do a bunch of gradient 50-50 1/3 of different colors. We're just going to swish. Here we go. Keep pulling it down. And when you do this, you can always add original color back to it. And you can even mix it even more, but it gives you a good gradient of your colors. There you go, a little bit better with the light off of it. You can see the difference. All right, let's get back here. All right, so again, we are going to do like this 50-50 method of a stippling and a brush stroke, a standard brush stroke. Let's go ahead and get into it here. We're concentrating on these high points. Now we're going to go ahead and get started here. Starting with our darkest color, hitting all the skin surface points that we want to be blue here. This color goes on quite bright but dries quite dark, especially onto a black primer. So we're going to keep going with this stippling method. We're not pushing too hard. I'm almost quite literally letting the brush just fall onto the model and just continue to stipple, especially in these more detailed positions like here on the face and on the muscles. And we just want this on basically all the skin. I'm not too worried about the wing sections here, especially on the back. The main focus on that will be when we do the next video, kind of going over using the same methods but trying to get a leather look instead of a scaled look. But we just want this dark blue everywhere where that is his skin. Slowly working our way down this palette. Every time we load up the brush, we're just going to a slightly lighter color and continuing this stipple method. Really focusing on the highlight points where the light will be hitting the most. There we go, going to the next gradients. Again, just letting it drop right onto the model. I'm not forcing it down. I'm just really focusing on all these highlight points. This is a big guy. He's got a lot of muscles. We want to highlight them. We'll go back over like his nails and stuff like that. Obviously, we're not going to be stippling those, but like the skin, the wings, and the cloth, and the metal portions, we're going to do like a series of these videos. Now we're going to go to the next highest color. And this we really just kind of dabbing on truly where the light's hitting. So for this, we really just want to find where the light is coming from. Now, generally with my D&D monsters, I do like this 45 from the front or whatever the pretty angle is. And what I kind of mean by the pretty angle is from side to side. And the easiest way to determine that is just look at the box art. That's your pretty angle. That's the best angle for this creature to take a photo of. That's what it's designed for. So we want to kind of use that as a reference to focus our highlights. That's where our light is coming from. It's one of the biggest things. You just got to know where your light source is coming from. Is it coming from the ground? Is it coming from the sun? Is it coming from a light? Is it a campfire? It's just, that goes in more into the OSL. And I almost use the same method when I do OSLs too, depending on what I'm doing. I do paint almost in a different method, depending if I'm painting D&D versus painting like Warhammer or anything like that. Especially like this dragon. Basically this dragon guy, right? So we actually, this stippling method, I actually really enjoy painting anything like that's supposed to have scales, because you can start really punching it up here in the next couple steps, and you can really start to get almost what, instead of it coming out to look like leather, you want it to look like scales. So having some big chunky differences with this nice brush method here will really allow that to happen when we move into this ultramarine blue. Right now we're still just kind of pumping up the skin. Well, right now he's looking really good. And now we're going to move on to this faded ultramarine blue. Just going to get a little bit here on the palette, kind of like a 50-50 with a little bit of true. there's a little mix, 50-50 mix with a tiny bit of ultramarine blue, faded ultramarine blue. And this is where we're going to really start making it look like scales. So really focusing on that light direction that we were just talking about. Let me load up and clean up the brush just like you were kind of doing for a dry brushing, but again, still sticking with this stippling method. Let's just go really light here. We're not really trying to press. We actually want it to be dotty so it looks like scales and not leather. That's the big thing here at this point. We want these bumps. We want these dots. And we're really just concentrating on these high points where the light's going to be shining. Knees, knuckles, elbow, face, this top of the wing, top of the feet. Oh, I didn't pull off my brush as much as I should have there, but we'll make it look okay. Really enjoying the muscle detail on this like extra wing arm back here. Clean it off again. Try to pump it up even further. And what's okay is if you go too bright, like we kind of just did there, you know, always bring it back down, and it just makes it look like a variation of scales. So again, we want these dots at this point because we're trying to get a scaled look. Making the side of his face here, I've kind of ignored these highlight points. All right, that's actually looking really good. Oof. All right. We can always go back and do some shadowing. We could do a dark wash. We could do basically like panel lining is one easy method, but we don't want to push out any of these highlight points that we're making here today. I'd say that looks pretty good for this stippling method. Oh, missed right here. But at no point did we actually clean our brush from start to finish here, and we just kept going up with the brightness of this blue. Yep, that looks really good. All right, let me clean my brush off here, and we'll get into the next brush. Start off kind of in the same method, and in this I'm not using the brush in a traditional sense. I'm actually using the side of the brush. I'm not really using the tip, and we're going to kind of get the same thing. We're going to start from these darker tones, so we're back to this dark, this blue black, and we're using it more like a swiping method. Definitely want to highlight this arm here, these knuckles. Really right now, again, back to where we started, and we're just really hitting all the skin portions to get this blue undertone. Going back over again. Let's get this back portion. Using the same thing, kind of just using the side of the brush and same thing as before, not really caring about getting any excess on the wings. So that's going to be the next video. As we punch up to the next color. As you can see, my brush is really flat, and that is on purpose, so we can use the side of it a lot easier and load up the brush. And we're just going to keep using this pooling method, just kind of swiping. And it really makes it easy to hit these highlight points. Trying to keep as much of the primer black as possible. And again, focusing on where the light is going to be hitting using the side of the brush. He's looking really good already, but we're ready to go to the next color. Just side of the brush, really focusing on where this light is hitting. It doesn't really matter which direction you go, just continue pushing up. The biggest mistake I see people making when they're trying to do highlights is either they go up too fast in their colors, and that's why I like doing my palette the way that I showed you in the beginning of the video, or they kind of give up, because a lot of paints dry a little bit different from what they look like, and you really need to know what your paints do and how they look when they are wet and how they look when they're dry, because then you could really get a little weird when it comes to color matching and finding good blends. And again, what I showed you in the beginning of the video, this allows you to really play with color theory and lets you see these minute little changes. And the other side is pretty much dry, so you can kind of see it. I've gotten the wing here. Let me go hit this wing real quick. Really ignore this wing and focusing on the arms and the legs and the head. Kind of forgot about the front side of this wing. But it's okay. We can go ahead and punch it with this medium color and this brighter color, so we're not too worried about this. But you can see a good comparison here, and the two different methods. And it depends on what you're painting. So if I'm going for more of a leather look, I like using this side brush method, but if I'm going for something like scales, I really enjoy using a stippling method that we did on the other side. So you really see it. Oh, it's a really awkward dark point here. Just kind of dab into this. There we go, that looks a lot better. And just pull down on the face. So this almost looks like leather. Let's really punch it. There we go. I know it probably doesn't show up on camera, but you can really see the difference in person. I've ignored the tail here too, but we're just going to kind of go from a medium and just drag it down using the side of the brush, almost like a dry brush. And the tail can be dark, that's perfectly fine. And then we'll go with like a little bit up, punch up. Just on the highest portion here. Against the back of the model, we don't really care about the back. Hit some more highlight points. Yeah, it's looking really good. I'm really happy with two different methods. It seems crazy. I'm gonna punch up this one using the stippling method, like on these knuckles and stuff like that real quick. It did dry really dark. Back to that ultramarine blue. Trying to really maintain that scale look. So these dots that come off this stippling method really accentuate that. And we can always say the light is coming from like one side more than the other, but it's all good. So what I'm gonna do is in 2 more videos, we're gonna do using this model, and we're basically gonna go over cloth and leather. And the next one, the cloth and the wings for more of a leather look. And then in the 3rd video, we'll be going over non-metallic metal on the weapons, using the same methods in both videos. Alright, so you can see my color palette here, what we've been doing. So we got one from this dark all the way down to this ultramarine, and I'm just going to hit a couple more highlight points with this super bright. Just to really punch up the brightness. Again, we're using the side of the brush, and we want these brush stroke marks to really sell the scale / leathery look. Just where the light's going to be hitting. The light's coming from the front, so we want a little bit more up here. Oh yeah, that's looking really good. And some just various bright spots on the top of the head. Oh, that's a little too much. Wipe. There we go. Actually, that looks really good. Just give it a little extra highlight here. I'm really trying to pump up this color here. I'm doing the same thing, ultramarine, faded ultramarine blue to kind of get it on par with the other one. Tap it off like a dry brush. I'm really going to punch up here. Again, we're going to go into almost this falling method again, where we want these dots, we want these circles to sell the scale look. Not too worried about the back. Top of the knee. Gonna ignore the back of this hand a little bit here. Really trying to pump up this face. Oh yeah, that's it. Yep, that's it. Alright, I'm going to hit a couple more highlight points here, and that's going to be it for this blue. I'm really happy with how this came out. This looks really good. It probably looks way better in person than it does on camera, but I hope you can see how just taking 3 colors can really fade it up. We're going to be doing the next video on cloth and the leather using the same method, and then we'll do the same thing for the non-metallic metals, the armor and the sword here, using the same method. The belly is going to be a fun one because it's right in the middle and it's round, so using these 2 different methods is going to be interesting split here. So that's going to be fun. I can't wait to try that. Well, there you have it. We have successfully painted the skin/scales of our big boy Dreadnought here, and so we have painted it on his left side. His right side, we have used a stipple method, and on his left side, we have used like a standard brush, but we used like the side of the brush, showing how to layer basically from black all the way up to this lighter blue, only using 3 colors, not counting the primer. So if you learned anything from this video today, please hit that like and hit that subscribe button, definitely. And if you learned something in particular, please let me know in the comments. So in the next video, we're going to be going over, we're going to use the same method again, but we're going to be concentrating on the cloth and the leather portions of the wings. And then in a third video, we are going to use the same method again and using, going for non-metallic metal. I will go ahead and tell you now in this video, my non-metallic metal is a weak point, and I want to use this to try to get better, to try myself 2 different methods and seeing which one I like. That's going to be it for today. And as always, every stroke of the brush and swing of the blade adds character to your miniatures.